2, 3, 4.
Sometimes we need to slow it down. Take a look around and breathe. 'Cause these times go by so very fast. Moments never last. Just breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. Quiet, be still, don't shout. Love is what it's all about. Breathe. Sometimes when you feel you've had enough, living is just too tough. Just breathe. 'Cause you'll regret when these days are past. Your friend just seen your last. Just breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. Quiet, be still, don't shout. Love is what it's all about. Just breathe. Breathe in, breathe out. Love is what it's all about. Be quiet, be still, don't shout. Just breathe. Just love. Just love. Just love.
Good evening and welcome to the Just Love Show. Thank you again for joining me. I'm just thrilled to be here tonight and in an extremely good mood and ready to take that deep breath and give a lot of thanks. So everyone take a deep breath with me before we get going. Just think about all the joy that you have in your life. We're surrounded by a lot of negativity. We get bombarded with it to the point where sometimes we can't see all the good that's going on around us. But it's important to take times like these out of our days to stop. Turn off everything. Be quiet. Like the song says, be still, don't shout, and just breathe. And just really take in be grateful for that breath. Now we've got our breathing out of the way. And before I introduce my very, very, very special guest, Fumi John Stewart, I want to talk about something that I've been trying to explain love and infinity, and I know it doesn't sound real, and it's a hard concept to grasp. And I was watching a show the other night, and it was on, I think, the Science Channel, and they were talking about virtual reality or the implanting of memories into people's brains. And the general scenario they set up is that we had 1 year to live before a comet hit the moon, and it was all over. So they were looking at all different ways that they could possibly save the human species, from building a giant ark, which they just didn't have time to do, to hopefully putting out some distress signal across the universe via quantum mechanics and the connecting of split protons across vast distances of space to be able to communicate and transport ourselves instantaneously. And then they also started talking about these virtual worlds that people are already creating. They're becoming more and more lifelike. And then also being able to imprint memories of other lives and other experiences into your mind directly. And the funny thing about this is that we've been skirting the edges of the truth, because what we're really seeking is some sort of bliss, some sort of paradise in this life that we already have, away from this life that we're finding so unsatisfying, unfulfilling. But the funny thing about any of these solutions is that where are these illusions coming from? Where does the technology to create these illusions that we're going to plug ourselves into come from? It comes from inside us. So when we talk about creating illusions that we're going to put ourselves into, that's creating an illusion within the illusion, or implanting the memory into our brains. Well, that's, again, an illusion that we've created inside this illusion. And the interesting thing about this is the guy said, well, now people ask the question, you're still going to be plugged in the machine and you've still only got a year. But as he points out, once you're inside this virtual world, time disappears as far as we know it. So you can literally live an infinite amount of time during that year. So you have infinities with infinities. So while we're out here scrambling to figure out how to externalize what we really want, we're missing the point that we're already living the illusion. We can manifest this loving truth, this bliss that we seek, these experiences we want to have. We don't need these machines to do it. And someday soon, I think, we're going to wake up to that, because these are the truths that we seem to need to externalize, to look at and say, okay, I can touch and feel this, so now it's real. Not realizing that it was real the minute we had the conscious awareness that it was there. Just in the same way that this whole reality that we have is an illusion. And who's to say that we haven't fallen in completely into some virtual reality anyway? But anyway, the reason I point this out is I really want you to start to kind of grasp, when I talk about infinity, what this really means and how close we really are to having a greater comprehension of it. It's not a question that can be answered. It's not even anything you can understand fully, in much the same way that love is not a question to be answered or something that you will ever be able to understand fully. But it is something that we need to comprehend and take in and internalize, because it opens up your life in ways that you can't even imagine, because it means that everything that you can imagine is possible. And now, just before I get to Fumi, I'm going to do my little segment where I find something that I've written over the past 5 years that strikes me as something pertinent to the guest or moves me with regards to the guest I have on the show. And tonight, I'm going to read this. The language of love is spoken without words or sound. It is the still tongue of the soul, the silent voice of God conveyed in the eyes, the touch, the breath. It is the dove's wings that flutters gently, caressing the heart. And then, as I always do, follow it up with someone else's great words. Let your love be like the misty rains, coming softly, but flooding the river. And that's a Malagasy proverb. Now to my guest. My guest tonight, as I said, is Fumi Johns Stewart. She is the executive director of the World Peace Prayer Society. The World Peace Prayer Society, much like the Just Love movement, had the goal, or has the goal, of connecting everyone on earth under this prayer of peace. It was started in 1955, and I'll let Fumi explain a lot more about it. She obviously knows a lot more about it than I do in much greater detail. But I feel a real kinship with the mission of what the World Peace Prayer Society is doing, and what I'm trying to do with the Just Love movement, and what so many people out there are trying to do with love movements, with peace movements, with unity movements. And so without further ado, I want to welcome my very, very special guest, Fumi Johns Stewart, to the Just Love Show. Fumi, thank you for joining me tonight.
Oh, such a pleasure to be with you, Pip. Thanks for having me on.
I feel so blessed to have you here tonight. I really do.
And hello to everyone listening out there. Love to you all.
Well, how did this journey begin for you, Fumi?
Yes, well, when people ask that question, I really have to go back to my childhood and my experiences growing up in Japan. My mother was Japanese, my father was American, and I grew up in the mid-50s. I was born in 1954, so that I was still young and growing up in Japan right after World War II. And still, when I was young, a young child, there was still a lot of, struggles in Japan. Japan now, everyone thinks it's a very rich country, but back there it wasn't. It was really struggling after war effort and bringing the economy back and so forth. There were a lot of homeless people on the streets still, and what I noticed growing up on the television, watching the TV channels, there was a lot of war movies, like, of course, in Japanese, and I would be watching these movies about how the Japanese people survived during the war, after the war, what it was like during the war, and dramas around wartime stories and so forth. And growing up watching that and knowing that, well, here I am with a Japanese mother, American father, and I just couldn't understand how my father country was at war with my mother country. And there was a lot of conflict within me. I just couldn't understand what that all meant. There was a lot of conflict, a lot of questions in my mind how that could ever happen to be. So that really influenced my childhood, and I always felt like I really want to do something to heal that between the two countries. So with that, and of course, my teenage years, a lot of that was forgotten, and I went to school, I went to college, being very aware of my multicultural background between these two countries. And when I was 21, I was living in Los Angeles going to college, or almost finishing college. My friend gave me this sticker that said, "May peace prevail on earth." And that was the moment where really my heart opened, and we're talking about love on this show. Really, the love flowed out of my heart, and I knew then that my mission would be to be connected with this prayer in some way, this message, this peace message, this prayer message. So when my friend told me that it was founded in Japan, then that really confirmed my first aha knowing moment, how I felt when I came across this message, and I pursued it, I studied it, I found everything I could about this movement, and really that was the start of my journey with this May Peace Prevail on Earth movement and the World Peace Prayer Society. And that was when I was 21 years old.
And could you tell us a little bit about how the World Peace Prayer Society started, and who originated, when it started, why it started?
Yes, I'd love to speak about that. Not many people know about the history. A lot of people know about May Peace Prevail on Earth and the Peace Poles, but not so much about the history. There was a man, a philosopher, educator, musician, writer, a deep thinker named Masahisa Goi, who, after experiencing World War II, coming out of the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the time, he really went into deep prayer and meditation, and was touched by this prayer, "May peace prevail on earth," which was an inspiration, spiritual insight inspiration that came out of all of his inner search, and he was called to spread this message and prayer to the world. And that's really how the message came to be. There was a little group that surrounded him. And what fascinates me is that he, it's non-denominational, it's all-encompassing message at that time when Japan was going through post-war recovery. in a really hard time. A lot of people were very, very poor. They didn't have food to eat, the rice, money to buy rice for their meals, and a lot of people were coming to him for advice. He was a very wise man as well, and he moved them toward thinking not about themselves alone, that he taught universal love and universal oneness, and how once you remove yourself from your own suffering and your own misfortunes and your poverty, and think about the world at large, the love for the world, the love for the planet, and the love for all beings, that love can really start healing not only yourself but the whole planet itself. So the prayer and message, "May peace prevail on earth," really became the focus and the prayer for a lot of people that came to receive guidance from him. And I just love the fact that he turned personal suffering around into thinking about global peace, global oneness, and global love at a time when a lot of people were really, really suffering and thinking about their own salvation. So I think that's really a sign of selfless love that a lot of people understood, and the movement just grew and grew to this day. So it's really a beautiful history of really compassion and love.
And did you get a chance to ever speak with Masahisa directly?
Unfortunately,
I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
And unfortunately I didn't get to see him in person, but we communicated by letter. And he passed away in 1980. I think it was 81. So I became interested in the whole movement about 3 years before he passed away. So I'm really fortunate to have had the letter writing with him, and but in this world you're connected to a person or a being, and it goes deeper than physical contact. So I feel very close with his spirit and what he came, what his mission was in this world. So I feel just fortunate to be connected on that level with him.
One of the things, it's great that I have you on the show tonight, because I was listening to Pacifica Radio, and I can't remember who the speaker was that they had on the other day, but they were talking about peace, and they were saying that one of the reasons that this particular guest had felt that peace hadn't succeeded yet was that it was undefined. When a lot of people think of peace, they don't know exactly what that means. What does peace mean to you?
Oh, that's a huge question. It's almost asking, what does love mean to you? So, I think depending on the situation I'm confronted in and experiencing at the moment, that the peace could be different things to me. For me, I just don't feel that it's of course there's peace without war, and there's peace without conflict. That's on the global level, peace on the global level. And then, outer peace. And then there's the inner peace where, no matter what's going on outside, it could be a peaceful world, but you can be in turmoil inside, and then you're not experiencing peace. So there's really different aspects of peace, and it's a different calling in a different, serves a different purpose for everyone. And I think it's just really a multi-dimensional state of being.
It almost, for me, peace feels like that acceptance of what is, and a willingness to no longer to try to feel that you need to compete with life, and that it's an acceptance of your place in this collaborative process that that we're taking part in, this infinite experience that we're having. And I'll, there some days I'm at peace, some days, many days I'm not at peace. I try, but that's sort of what peace means to me. I think is that you find that place of acceptance where, like you said, you move beyond yourself and beyond your own personal struggles to see the larger community that you're serving and your place in that. And I don't just mean the community of man, but the community of life itself, the community of life's process, if you will, that keeps everything unfolding. And whether we're physically at war or not, what we have to understand is that everything is perfect, and that it might seem turmoil to us, but ultimately it's still going to be okay in the long run, and we don't have to suffer the way we do. And I think that's coming to peace, is that it doesn't have to be this struggle, that life can be a collaborative process, not a competitive one. It's just my perception of it. I do have a question. So your mom was Japanese, correct?
Yes, she was.
Now, she was obviously there. She grew up in Japan before the war?
She was a teenager during the war.
What was, I've never really got to ask you on this question. Did she ever share, or did you have any understanding of what Japanese culture, or what the sense of Japan, the Japanese people was with regards to war before the bombs were dropped as opposed to after the drop? How did that change the way that the Japanese people viewed life and viewed peace and viewed love as opposed to before the bombs were dropped? Right.
Well, what I know from what the Japanese people experienced, well, before, I'm not so sure about before, but certainly the atomic bomb incident, most Japanese people are very forgiving around that. And that always fascinated me. So many people, I've actually been to Hiroshima and Nagasaki and talked to atomic bomb survivors, quite a number of them. And they would all express the feeling that, it was the best thing for Japan.
Wow.
Yeah, they said that was actually, the karma of Japan. They're very accepting, and they know that this should never happen again. But very forgiving and not blaming. And I really haven't met a lot of people that had a lot of anger or really hard feelings toward Americans as a result. And it's just a part of, I think, spiritually, being very Shinto and Buddhist, and just a lot of forgiveness and acceptance around suffering. It's just, I think that the Japanese culture is just really just amazing and beautiful and incredible in that way. The way they have practiced forgiveness around that.
That is really remarkable, and it definitely shows that the Japanese culture is definitely on the path to being more highly evolved. I see the same things with a lot of indigenous peoples when I talk to them, Native Americans, Aboriginals. There's not this whole wanting to hold on to the past. There's a wanting to hold on to who they are, but there's not a lot of anger or a feeling of we need to somehow balance the scales, that there needs to be some sort of retribution. This seems to be much more of that in Western culture than there is in either in Eastern cultures or in Native American or indigenous peoples. And that to me is definitely the sign of more highly evolved beings. The ability to say what's happened yesterday doesn't matter, but what we have learned from, there's no reason to seek revenge. It's a waste of time. We have to take what we've learned from this experience and move forward and make tomorrow better.
Yes, and that's one a topic that Masahisa Goi would talk about is exactly that. He would say, Japan suffered the atomic bomb, and we need to send a message out to the world. And the message is, may peace prevail on earth. And we have a mission to really express to the world and send this thought form out to the world for healing. And coming from Japan, it is the biggest statement we can make to, to move us into the next stage of evolution, so to speak. So he was very, very on that path of asking the Japanese people to make this the peace message coming out of Japan through the suffering, but it's really for humanity, and that it's all about forgiveness and love.
I was praying on 9/11. I was saying, please let this be something that unites the world. I really saw clearly that we could go in one of two directions. We could either go down the path of love, because the United States had the entire world united around it at that point. And even in Iran, there was a tremendous outcrying of sympathy. Our supposed, mortal enemy had great sympathy and compassion for what had happened. Or we could have gone and doubled down on the path of fear. And boy, did we double down. I mean, I shudder to think what would have happened if anyone had ever detonated a nuclear bomb here. I don't see that unfortunately, at this point in our history, I don't see the American people as being that forgiving, and it's really a shame, because the path that we're on doesn't really serve anyone ultimately. And I'm also curious, do you feel that with some of the things that are going on with the islands over there and the territorial disputes with China and minerals and fishing areas, and now the Japanese wanting to be a little bit more overtly militarized, do you feel that there's a call for by some in Japan to engage in this culture of war that is spread, like a disease around the world?
As it's such a sensitive and huge topic, and after the World War II finished, that Japan signed the declaration into their constitution that they will never fight a war or take up arms again. This was written into the Japanese constitution. And so Japan does not have an army. It has a self-defense force, but it never really, and the interesting thing is the Americans made sure that was written into the Japanese constitution. So it became illegal for Japan to fight a war ever again. And I think that's just fantastic, and it's been upheld. I think maybe there's another country, Costa Rica, that has that as well in their constitution. I believe that they have something like that, similar. And so they've come, it's 60 years. Next year will be the 60th year after the dropping of the bomb. A lot of the people who experienced World War II are passing on. So they're not able to really talk about the experiences, and the government. There's a faction who wants to take up arms again, and it's being debated seriously within the Japanese government on what to do about this clause in the Constitution. So it is coming up, but I think that I'm really hopeful. I think the Japanese general, I don't think they're going to allow that to happen, and I'm really hopeful that it doesn't. But it is being debated.
It is. I hope so too. I think that there's such a tremendous amount of hope for the future. The fact that the Japanese people could be so forgiving after what happened in World War II, and to be quite frank, there's a lot of reasons that they would have not to be. And in much the same way, many indigenous peoples have every reason to be absolutely, if you were to look at it through the revenge filter, they would have as much or more reason to want revenge as anyone else. The fact that Japan has not only forgiven the United States for what happened, both with the bombs dropping and the fact that we instigated, we used them as the tool to bring us into war to begin with, which is pretty widely known at this point what happened with Pearl Harbor, that was another false flag event. And it's interesting, they draw a lot of comparisons between Pearl Harbor now and 9/11. The fact that Japan was able to forgive us so completely and actually become an ally, that's something that's just not, I don't think that makes enough headlines. I don't think that that's celebrated. I think that should be celebrated every day. I think it should be at least one day a year. We should stop and go, oh my God, these peoples who have every reason to be furious with each other, especially Japan towards us, they found forgiveness in their hearts. They have found a way to be allies and make both countries more successful through this tremendous, vile, heinous attack on civilian lives and on the planet itself. Yet somehow something beautiful rose out of that. And we don't really talk about that much.
I agree with you. I completely agree with you. And I think, along those lines, it's so beautiful that the May Peace Prevail on Earth movement came out of Japan. And, we haven't talked about peace poles, but these monuments, totem poles with May Peace Prevail on Earth written on them in various languages, they're planted all around the world. And it's really, a symbol of that, of that expression of forgiveness and love coming out of Japan and the ashes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that, these symbols are being planted all around the world, and hopefully that is a reminder for people to think about the forgiveness and, the great love that is possible.
Yeah, I don't want to, belabor this too much, but I think it's something that I never hear anyone talk about. And so I would really like to spend a little time, even if it gets a little bit repetitive, really letting people understand. There were I don't know the exact number of people that were killed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but there were hundreds of thousands, if not close to 1 million or more. The way that this came about, the conflict with Japan, if you are a student of history, then you know this. If you believe only listen to the mainstream press or what you were taught through older school books, you probably don't. But the way we became in conflict with Japan to begin with was by stopping the sales of oil and scrap metal, which they desperately needed. We had warning about Pearl Harbor before it happened. This is well documented now. We even had a warning from the Australian military telling us literally 3 days before the attack that this was going on, and Roosevelt, who I admire greatly as a president, said ignore it and let that happen so that we could be drawn into World War II, rightly or wrongly. That's what happened. Now, when it came time to make the decision to drop bombs on Japan, Japan was getting pretty close to surrendering by that point. The argument was made, or has been made throughout history, or American history, that we did that as a way to save tremendous amount of lives because so many people would have been killed had we tried a direct invasion of Japan. And that's not really true. In many ways, they dropped the bomb because they had these new big toys that they needed to see how they worked. And I point this out because, again, this wasn't something that had to happen. And in the aftermath of that, as Fumi's pointed out, Japan forgave us and is now maybe our closest ally outside of maybe Great Britain in the world. And I lay it out like that so you can really understand and think about your mindset, and I'm speaking to the audience now, think about your mindset after 9/11. Did it ever, so few Americans ever said, you know what, we need to stop, we need to take a deep breath, this is madness, we need to figure out how to move forward, we need to join with our allies, not to, yes, we need to bring the people that did this to justice, absolutely, but let's stop, let's figure out how we move forward and stop these things from happening again. And we didn't. And you have to stop and think, had we taken the path and the understanding and the compassion and the more evolved approach that Japan took to us, think about where the world would be today, people. I mean, it's really, really remarkable if you have ever seen the pictures of what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the forgiveness there, it's really striking me how powerful and how beautiful that is, and what a different world we would have if we just all concentrated on this one thing instead of looking towards the next war constantly. Here's this bright, shimmering example of how even out of the most atrocious, almost genocidal attack in a way, people still forgave and became our friends. And we can do that. It's just a matter of making that choice to either go down the path of love or go down the path of fear. We've seen throughout history, time and time again, the path of fear will lead us to destruction over and over and over again. This isn't having to look in the future and predict anything. Fear, we go to war, causes more war, violence begats, on and on and on. Peace, guess what? You build a successful country, you build great allies, you have great relationships with people, the world starts to change. And this is something that we need to really take to our hearts and take to our souls, and we need to ponder this because it is maybe the most powerful symbol of peace on our planet today. And it's something that, again, we do not talk about. The news doesn't celebrate it. We don't have a day of unity with Japan, or whatever we would want to call that, the day of forgiveness, if you will. And I think it's something that I personally would like to see discussed more openly. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
That's so well put. It's so beautiful, Kip. And, to me, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki Day, which falls August 6th and 9th every year, it really means a lot to me. As it's just not remembrance. It's a day of, forgiveness and all of that combined. It's really a commemoration, and we celebrate that by broadcasting live from Hiroshima Peace Park, the ringing of the peace bell, which happens at the exact moment that the bomb was dropped at 8:10 in the morning, or was it 8:15 in the morning, and we have a live stream on the internet, and people can actually watch and join in as the bell is rung, and it's pretty phenomenal in Japan. The whole country stops for a minute. Everything, the radio, the television, it's broadcasted through, just public, every channel, news station, radio stations, the moment of silence. It's just phenomenal.
It really it's remarkable, and I wish they gave it a lot more exposure here, but they don't. And like so many things with American history, unfortunately, we only want to sort of paint everything with this rosy brush that everything we've done has been good, and we have done a lot of good. I when people will say that America is the greatest country in the world, I won't disagree with them. But the problem is we all have so far to go. And I use this, maybe it's a bad analogy, but it's kind of like saying, I'm in the very best part of hell. It doesn't mean you don't have a long way to go. And I think it's important for you to own your failures as a nation, as a culture, as a race, as a religion, as well as your successes. The Catholic Church has to own things like the Inquisition, along with all the good that they've done in the world. The United States needs to own things such as what we've done to the Native Americans, such as what we did as far as dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then we need to look at the good that's come out of those things rather than whitewash it and push it under the carpet. We need to pull those things out of the closet. We need to look at this as a success for peace, as a success that if the Japanese people can forgive us and we can become friends, any people on this planet can become friends. There is not a single divide that can't be conquered because we have conquered that divide, because we have forgiven one another, because we have become friends. And peace has, as you pointed out, been going on for 60 years. I mean, it's more, there just really aren't words to describe how truly remarkable that is.
It is. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Kip. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. It really means a lot to me.
Well, I'm glad I didn't, as I said with most of my shows, I have a general idea of where I want to go, but this, I didn't see us focusing on this, but it sure feels in my heart something that we need to focus on. It feels like something I just want to, because until we got on the show today, I really hadn't thought about it this hard. I mean, it crossed my mind from time to time. Oh, wow, the Japanese, gosh, they forgave us. Wow, that's pretty amazing. And then I go about my day. And in sitting here talking to you, the full impact of what that really means sank into me. And it seems like something that's a rallying cry that needs to erupt, that with the Japanese people and with the people all over the world, if we can just look at this one thing, man, there's a lot of hope in that. In the most horrific thing you can possibly imagine, the one thing that scares the hell out of everyone, nuclear war. Gosh, we're waiting for a dirty bomb here. Yet, what came out of us dropping these bombs? And what came out of that is the proof that peace is possible.
Exactly. That is so beautifully put, and I'm so glad all the listeners are listening to this and taking this to heart. What you're saying, this is really remarkable.
Well, and now let's talk about all the good things we can do that the World Peace Prayer Society is doing around the world, because I know this isn't a passive organization. There are activities, there are things that people can do and be. And what are those things? What can we go out to do to start to get the word out?
Yes, I'm really excited to talk about it, because there's activities that all of us can do to bring the message of peace out, into the community, and celebrate this with your family and your loved ones. And what comes to mind up in forefront is the peace pole, the planting of peace poles. And I'd be surprised if a lot of the listeners don't know about this, because it's an activity, it's been going on for many, 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 many years. It was started, World Peace Prayer Society came into being in 1954, or actually the May Peace Prevail on Earth movement. The society was not incorporated till many years later, and the peace poles started in about 1972. as a way of how can this message, may peace prevail on earth, become more visible, more present in people's lives, a reminder every day in people's lives. How can we bring it alive? And people, in Japan back then came up with this idea as well. Let's put it on a pole, four-sided pole. But it wasn't just a four-sided pole back then. It could be written on a big piece of stone. It was put on the wall. It was put on stickers. So really making the message visible. So, but the peace pole was a really great way. It was planted in various locations, and people got very active in planting peace poles all throughout Japan. And then in 1980, what was it? In 1983, I believe. Right around the time when I went back to Japan for a while, and I became really active there and helped the group in Japan bring the peace poles out to the international community. And I have a story. At that time, I decided to plant peace poles in. I created a peaceful journey, so to speak, with a very close Japanese girlfriend of mine, and we decided to drive to all of the original 13 colonies.
Oh, did you film that by any chance?
No.
Oh, we need to do it again. We need to go on a global peace pole tour and film everyone who's planted these poles and share that story of behind all of the poles that have been planted all over the world. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It just caught my attention as a filmmaker.
Have iPhones. We had no internet. It was a phone calls and making plans to plant all of these peace poles. But Masahisa Goi, the last name Goi, represents the number 51. So my girlfriend and I said, well, we will plant 51 peace poles and all throughout the 13 colonies. So we planned the trip. We shipped the peace poles out. We rented a U-Haul truck. We put 51 peace poles in the back, and we started planting peace poles. We went from we went to all the 13 colonies, and we wrote letters and got a permission and created a whole tour journey, mapped everything out before we left, and then the trip took about 6 weeks. And it was just remarkable, and that was really the start of the Peace Pole Project here in the United States. And as a result of that planting, we realized that the peace poles need to be crafted and available in the U.S. for people to be able to order and plant, get more information, and so forth. So I wrote a couple of magazine articles, and these were all there were alternative magazines, new age type magazines, macrobiotic magazines, health magazines, and it was published in a couple of those magazines. And someone in Michigan read it and wrote me a letter in Japan and said he's very interested in becoming the peace pole craft, the craft person and contact person in America to be able to make and ship peace poles out to everyone. And it was so amazing because he lived in East Jordan, Michigan, and he was a carpenter, and his name was Joseph.
That's funny.
It was just like perfect.
That is too funny.
Oh, I thought, this is our man. He just showed up, and he crafted peace bowls starting 1986, which was the International Year of Peace, declared by the United Nations. And that was the start of the first peace bowl making effort in this country. So it has a long history, and since then, there's so much support around peace bowls. It's a beautiful project. There's an estimated, it's just an estimate of 200,000 peace bowls on the planet now. And we know for a fact that every country has at least one peace bowl. And just to think that, over the years that so many people have supported this message and really got the significance and importance of conveying and planting and anchoring this message, within their communities and with their friends and families. It's just really so moving to me because I've been through the whole journey from the beginning. And so the peace polls are a wonderful way of people getting active. You can even craft your own. If you're not a carpenter or handy, you can order them, and they've been planted in private homes, in city parks, given to schools, to city mayors, organizations, businesses. There's no limit to where you can plant or present or gift a peace bowl to. And people are very, very creative, and ceremonies are planned and organized around peace bowl plantings. It's just a beautiful, beautiful project.
And how would someone go about if they wanted to plant a peace bowl? Speaking of which, I live here in San Rafael. Do we have any peace bowls in Marin?
I believe there's one in front of in San Anselmo City Hall for one. Oh gosh, I'll have
we need to get some at the Marin Civic Center.
Oh, do you want to do that project together?
Yes, absolutely. And I've got good friends here at the county seat that I can reach out to.
Let's do that. That would be terrific. I mean, the more public the location, the more people come into contact with the message, and it just really changes the whole vibration and energy field of where peace bowls are planted. And in fact, there was a study done by college students. It's called the Frogtown Study in Minnesota, outside of St. Paul, and it's a marginal community. They had a lot of crime, a lot of homelessness and a lot of suffering in that neighborhood. And there was a man who got really active in planting peace bowls. I think they planted like 20 in a very close area within the same community, and they began to see how this shifted the community, and they saw that the crime rate it decreased, and people were gravitating and coming around the peace bowls and having gatherings. It's just a beautiful study that these college kids did. So I know, that's one study, but I know as just being around a peace bowl and a lot of peace bowl plantings and ceremonies and events around peace bowl, it really brings the heart together. It's really, I call it it's a meeting place of the heart. And when it's really about love, Kip. Spreading the love.
It's really funny. Now that I'm thinking about it, the Civic Center was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and what a famous building it is, and what an amazing artist he was. But if you go up to the courtyard area where you have the obelisk, the sort of tall thin pyramid that they have out there. There's a water fountain and a green courtyard outside where their cafeteria is, and some information on the building. And now I'm remembering that there's also a little statue of a Japanese woman there.
Oh.
That's in honor of, I can't remember what it's for off the top of my head, but it just made me think, wow, I think they would probably be very receptive to something like this.
Yes. Well, I'm very excited about that idea, so we definitely need to follow up on that.
You know, one other thing that popped into my head is, and you probably know this story far better than I do, but the journey of what went on with Japan and what needs to go on in the world reminds me a lot of the journey of the samurai. The man that spends his whole life fighting, he becomes the very best fighter he can, and there's no one that can defeat him. And then he gets to a point in his life, he lays down his sword, and he realizes that he's not sure what he was ever fighting for to begin with, and that the real victory is in laying down the sword. And that's what Japan did. They laid down the sword after World War II. And that's what we all need to do. That's the brave thing to do. That's the courageous thing to do. That's what every, from Jesus to Buddha, it's always about turning the other cheek as the true act of rebellion. It's not in the hitting back. That's not where your strength comes from.
Yes, it's not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength.
Absolutely. Just all of a sudden, the parallel between the journey of the samurai and Japan and what happened after World War II seemed very synonymous to me. And just a great lesson that I think we should all take. You're a writer as well, correct?
Oh, I don't believe that. No, I don't think I'm a writer.
Oh, I thought for some reason I thought you'd mentioned that you were a writer, but
well, I like to write more than I like to speak.
Oh, okay. That's what you said on the phone. So I was going to have you share something that you've written with us, but I didn't want to put you on the spot. Are outside of the Peace Pole project, or is there any other ways that people can get involved in, and how specifically, if you can share with everyone, how they would reach out to become involved with the Peace Pole project, to become involved with the World Peace Prayer Society? How do they find you?
Yes, well, we have a beautiful website, and you can find us at worldpeace.org. It's a great, easy website to remember. And we have information on the Peace Pole project. We have a wonderful photo gallery, where you can select different topics and find photos of peace poles that have been planted around the world. It's a wonderful gallery. We also have, prominent locations, prominent people with peace poles, including the Dalai Lama and, Marianne Williamson and Nobel Peace Prize laureates, and, just incredible locations around the world. But we plant peace poles. People plant peace poles. You don't have to be a famous person to plant peace poles. It all happens within the community and at home. So worldpeace.org, lots of information. We have a children's Peace Pals program. If you're into art, into education, into children, we have a art competition and exhibition. We have artwork collected from almost 100 countries around the world that go on tour. And if you're interested in exhibiting artwork of children, each artwork has "May Peace Be Real on Earth" written on it, and done by children between the age of 8 and 16. Just beautiful, beautiful artwork that you can present and exhibit in your school, city hall, and even businesses have exhibited these artwork. So just a lot of information by going to worldpeace.org. Fantastic.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight, and I hope to have you back on again soon. My guest next week will be Steve Morrison. He is the author of the Spiritual Workout Handbook and also An Extra Year, Grief and Loss in the New Age. But before we end the show tonight, first of all, you can find me at justlovemovement.com, or you can reach out to me through justlovemovementradio@gmail.com. And please do. This is about getting active and involved. And before we wrap up the show tonight, Fumi picked a song for us to play out the show tonight. And if you'd like to introduce that, that'd be great. And if you could stay around for a couple minutes after the show, I would really appreciate it.
Oh, you want me to? Would you like me to introduce the song?
That would be awesome.
Yes, this song, I think many of you know James Twyman. He's a great supporter of May Peace Prevail on Earth. He loves Peacefuls, and he wrote this song for us a couple of years back, and it's called May Peace Prevail on Earth. So I hope you enjoy it.
Time is now, the moment's clear, the last shall be the first, for each one stands on sacred ground. May peace prevail on earth. So long in dreams we have foreseen the path for which first, but now we claim what was our goal. May peace prevail on earth. A world of love we now claim, and each one of us will light that flame. Prevail on earth, now and always prevail on earth. In each one of us prevail on earth. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail on earth, now and always prevail on earth. In each one of us prevail on earth. May peace prevail on earth.
Fumi?